The first time she said it, the wind was sharp enough to cut skin. I was halfway up the porch steps, grocery bags biting into my fingers, when her voice stopped me cold. She stood on her lawn in the fading light, her hair pulled back, her expression caught somewhere between confusion and hurt. She asked me why I kept avoiding her. I turned slowly, and for a moment the world felt smaller than my chest. I told her that looking at her hurt. The words fell heavy between us, heavier than I expected, heavier than she deserved. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet miracles that happen between broken people, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles. Stories like this exist because people still believe hearts can heal. Her name was Amina, and she moved in 6 months after my wife died. The house next door had been empty for years, the paint peeling like old scars. I had grown used to silence. Silence was easier. Silence didn't remind me of what I had lost. When Amina arrived with her daughter and a moving truck full of mismatched furniture, I watched from behind my curtains like a man observing life from underwater. She smiled at everyone who passed. She waved at me the first day. I pretended not to see. The truth was simple and unbearable. Amina looked like my wife. Not exactly. Not in features or voice. But in the way she tilted her head when she listened. In the way she knelt in the dirt to plant flowers as if speaking gently to them. In the way she laughed, full and unguarded, as if the world had never broken her. Every glimpse of her felt like reopening a wound that had barely scabbed over. Grief is a strange kind of loneliness. It doesn't just take a person, it rearranges the entire landscape of your days. My mornings used to begin with the smell of cardamom tea and the soft sound of my wife humming. In the kitchen. After she was gone, mornings began with an ache in my throat and the ticking of a clock that sounded louder than it should. I kept busy with work, with errands, with anything that kept me from sitting still long enough to remember too clearly. Amina did not allow the neighborhood to remain quiet. Within weeks, she painted her porch a warm shade of blue. She planted jasmine along the fence. Her daughter rode a bicycle in uneven circles, her laughter ringing across the street. I told myself to ignore it. I told myself I deserved the solitude. But sometimes at night, when the wind carried the scent of jasmine into my window, I would close my eyes and feel the ghost of another life pressing against my ribs. The day she confronted me was not planned. She had tried kindness before. She had brought over a plate of biryani once, knocking softly while I stood frozen on the other side of the door. I didn't answer. Another time, she waved from her driveway, her daughter tugging her hand, and I walked inside as if I had forgotten something urgent. Each time I avoided her, I saw confusion flicker across her face. That day, she decided she deserved an explanation. When I told her looking at her hurt, I saw the color drain from her expression. I wanted to take the words back, to explain that it wasn't her fault, that she carried a resemblance to someone who once held my entire world together. But grief makes cowards of us. Instead of explaining, I retreated into my house and closed the door gently, as if that could soften the blow. For days afterward, I avoided even the windows. I heard her outside, watering plants, talking to her daughter. I imagined her replaying my words in her mind, trying to understand what she had done wrong. The guilt began to weigh heavier than the grief. One evening, as rain began to fall in thin silver lines, I noticed her car still parked crookedly in the driveway long after dark. A single light glowed in her living room. I told myself it was none of my business. I had chosen distance. I had chosen walls. But then I heard something through the rain, a child crying, sharp and frightened. It pierced through me in a way I couldn't ignore. I stood at my door for a long minute, my hand hovering over the knob. Grief had kept me frozen for months, but that cry melted something stubborn inside me. I grabbed my jacket and crossed the lawn in the rain. When she opened the door, her eyes were swollen. Her daughter lay on the couch, flushed with fever, whimpering in restless sleep. Amina looked at me not with anger but with desperation. She said she didn't know anyone else here yet. She said the fever wouldn't break. In that moment, whatever wall I had built felt small and foolish. I drove them to the hospital. I sat in the waiting room while doctors worked. I bought water from a vending machine and pressed it into her shaking hands. We didn't talk much. There was no need. Shared fear creates its own language. By morning, the fever had subsided. The doctors assured her it was a viral infection that would pass. Relief softened her features, and for the first time since she had moved in, she looked less like a reminder of my past and more like a person standing bravely in her own storm. In the quiet of the hospital corridor, she asked me gently why I had said what I did. There was no accusation in her tone, only curiosity and a hint of sadness. This time, I told her the truth. I told her about my wife. About how cancer had stolen her in slow, cruel increments. About how I had watched the strongest person I knew become fragile in my arms. I told her how seeing someone with the same warmth in their eyes felt like being dragged back to a place I wasn't ready to revisit. She listened without interrupting, her expression steady. When I finished, she didn't tell me I should move on. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She simply said she was sorry for my loss and that she hoped one day her presence wouldn't hurt anymore. Something shifted after that night. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But slowly, like the first crack of light under a closed door. I began to nod when I saw her. Then to offer a cautious hello. Her daughter started waving at me every morning before school. One afternoon, I found myself helping fix her broken fence after a storm, our hands brushing awkwardly as we passed tools. Grief didn't disappear. It never does. But it began to share space with something else, connection. I realized that avoiding her hadn't protected my wife's memory. It had only deepened my isolation. Loving someone deeply does not mean you must refuse the warmth of others forever. Months passed. The jasmine bloomed again. The house next door no longer felt like an intrusion into my sorrow. It felt like a reminder that life continues, stubborn and beautiful. Sometimes Amina and I would sit on our separate porches at dusk, talking about small things, her daughter's school projects, my work, the weather. The conversations were gentle and unforced. One evening, as the sky burned orange and purple, she thanked me for coming over that rainy night. She said she had almost felt alone in the world before I knocked. I told her she had done the same for me, though she didn't know it. Her moving in had forced me to confront the pain I was hiding from. It had forced me to remember that healing is not the same as forgetting. Looking at her no longer hurt the way it once had. Instead, it reminded me that my heart was still capable of feeling, even after being shattered. That was both terrifying and beautiful. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone you've lost or someone you've been too afraid to let in, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles. And before we end, leave a special comment telling us about a moment when kindness changed your life. Words might be the comfort someone else is searching for. Because sometimes the people we avoid are not our enemies. They are mirrors reflecting pain we haven't faced yet. And sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is open the door, step into the rain, and let connection begin again.